Good evening. Welcome to Investigator News, and me and William are here for World War III night report. Well, William, I almost mistook you for Karen. What are you doing? I was like, oh, Karen, but she don't have a green W. So, welcome everyone tonight. We have, boy, we're getting into drones a little bit, but we do have a little bit of news of what's going on with the F-35s, and then we have a little bit on um, China and Russia to create this new international order. And then we have the Space Force is building up. And then, um, and then we're going to get into Russia getting some drones from Iran. And then we'll get into a lot of drones. A lot of neat looking drones I got for everyone to see tonight. So, um, so first off, we've got the F-35. Um, so, William, I'm going to drop you for a second. Well, maybe. No, I can't. Anyway, I can't do it. Oops. Now, these F-35 jets, they carry a little bit, they say, of Chinese metal, which has become a huge issue. So, a little bit of what they don't know about is can become a big issue because the alloy is banned in America and requiring a waiver to allow the metal to remain in place. So, now, Bloomberg and Politico and even Lockheed Martin stepped in to say that um, the Chinese alloy was allowed a decade ago by the Pentagon itself. And the program, it had a little bit of delays and some cost overruns that had been in every plane made since 2003. Now, according to Politico, they banned the alloy as part of a magnet within the F 35. And although Lockheed Martin is the overall builder of this airplane, it's part of the question that comes from Honeywell. So what they have said is the Defense Contract Management Agency does not impact the readiness of the 825s, F-35s, already delivered as part of an order of more than 3,000 planes. Now, what they've been able to confirm is that the magnet does not transmit information or harm anything. But they're looking at quality, safety, security risks, and um, so the defense contractors voluntarily shared all the information with DCMA and JPO, and what they found was um, they have found an alternative source for the alloy that will be used in future turbo machines, is what they're calling them. And what it does is the magnet includes cobalt and a samarium or alloy, which is determined to be um, produced in China. So they've got a problem with this. And so what they've decided is um, the other thing that is a bigger, broader issue is not only is this made in China, but then Russia and Iran and other places where they've been able to get um, a lot of the materials that they need. Um, so now, William, I know you have a lot to say on this, so I'll go ahead and let you go.
So it's not an intelligent, um, like a computer chip material. It's just a basic element like you see on the periodic tables. And what they do is they dope other metals with these elements to, instead of have ceramic magnets, they have super magnets. And because have extra large magnetic fields, they can miniaturize components, make smaller antennas, um, servos, actuators, things like that for aircraft. And but it doesn't transmit information. It's just an electronic field to drive a motor. So and it doesn't even affect the field. The field's created by electricity to push against the magnet. The magnet's always there. issue is not the material, but the sourcing of the material. So if we get into a fight, say with China, we don't run out of spare parts because we don't have a source for that material. So it can be manufactured here at home without having to worry about a supply chain that comes from China. So that's the big deal behind the sourcing of the chemistry of the elemental chemistry of those magnets.
Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, so, and I think it's a lot of the, maybe, I was thinking the magnets, but when it mentioned cobalt, that's the other thing I was thinking that was coming from China itself. So I just think they just, it was a little problem, and then it's huge because of China being a part of it. But then when you hear that China and Russia and Iran and some of these other countries that aren't our allies are part of this, I think this is where they blew it up. Because even Lockheed Martin said it wasn't a real big deal.
It's not a big deal. It's just the elements they use, like in the drive motors for the Tesla. Tesla gets their chemicals from China, and we just need to be able to produce our own, and instead of just getting the cheapest source available. And that's why China becomes a source and outcompetes our corporations, our mining corporations, is because they reduce the price and make it so our miners can't compete with them. They do it through financing. They don't do it through the mining itself. And, we get left behind, so we have to be careful and not allow our sourcing to go through the Chinese, because then they could cut us off just like Russia cut off Europe's oil.
Mm-hmm. Now, did you say something about one of those planes crashing, and that could have been the start of all this?
No, that wasn't
wasn't
what went on with the F-35s. The problem with the airplane crash was an F-16
okay.
that had bogus components in the ejection seat.
That's right.
This other thing is the F-35 has to do with
the alloys and
just electric motors and generators in the F-35, and that was just brought to the attention through the normal course of business. So there was no problems with the airplane itself. They're fully functional. The F-16s 2 months ago had the problem with the ejection seat, and I would suspect by now they've got that all sorted out.
Yeah. I remember here, I think I did the report on that the other day. Well, it's only Wednesday. I think yesterday I might have done it. So
ejection seats are like they're really technical in that they go up a rail, so they're like a rocket sled that sits underneath you. Plus, it's got a deployable drogue, then it's got a deployable parachute, and it will separate you from the seat at a certain altitude. And then if you go into the water, it will remove the harness from the chute. So all of those different things require different materials. And then it's not actuated by electricity, because if your airplane loses an engine, it won't have electricity. So it has to all be initiated through explosive materials.
Yeah.
So they've got det cords running all over, and actually inside the seat there's a little computer that's run off from a little rocket motor, and so it does all the calculations, and it's running just like an air data computer on your aircraft and deploying all these different things, because you might be knocked unconscious when you eject, and so it's got to do all that stuff without you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the parachuting part, they have got to be trained on parachutes. This I learned from Larry, my brother. If I remember right, he was part of uh, way back. He was teaching the troops how to parachute. I'm going to have to ask him on it, but that was something he did, and he said no matter if it has anything to do with parachuting, they got to go through the course for this, so they know what they're doing. So I can imagine.
Yeah, because you want to keep your spine straight when you deploy the chute, because otherwise you could break your spine, your neck. You want to make sure that when you reach the ground, you don't land on stiffened legs, because you can break your pelvis, your knees, your ankles. And you want to protect all of your functioning, because you're going to have to escape and evade the enemy. So you've got to go through all that training.
Yeah. And it's not like they show in the movies and they just push all the soldiers out and they all jump down. No, they go through special training to be a paratrooper. There's a lot more to it than
they
just
do ground
jumping out of a
training
plane.
long before they go into the aircraft.
They sure do. Or before they get pushed off the aircraft. They go in the aircraft to learn. So, but
they get pushed off the tower. They go into a jump seat. They go into all different sorts of things before they ever get on the aircraft.
Yeah, before they, we should have. If I would have, thought about it, we should have had Larry on to talk about it, because boy, he could probably tell everybody a lot of stuff he learned. So, but I'll check with him and make sure I have my facts right. And we have Karen and Linda that just walked into the chat room, and good evening, ladies. And so, to move on, we had that big meeting over in with China and Russia that had this big meeting. And it almost sounds like they don't talk on the phone, that they were like old buddies, and they hadn't seen each other in a long time. And the thing about it is the chop, oh boy, I'm all for chopsticks tonight, William. The top Chinese official said the country will continue its partnership with Russia, and very close, in hopes in creating a new international order that will rival Western influence. And they're willing to work with Russia side by side to continually implement high-level strategic cooperation between the two countries as being leaders, and safeguard common interest and promote the development of international order, or a more adjustable, and they said reasonable, direction, and that the West isn't being reasonable in what they are demanding of certain countries. And the comments come with Russia's ongoing war with Ukraine, which has resulted in international outrage, and an effort made by Western governments to sanction Russia and maybe even cut off influence around the globe. But not only that, they're looking at China of even sanctions with them for what they are working with Russia, and also backing them up with financial aid, come to find out. And let's see, while China has not really provided Russia with direct support or relief from the sanctions they're getting, it has extended a trade partnership with Russia, with the economy struggling, and find international partners. About 81% of Russian car imports during the second quarter came from China. And so not only that, but China's Xiaomi phone brand came from the most popular in Russia at the same period. So China has been dependable for a lot of the consumer Russian fuel. And so now they're looking at getting a discount from Russia. So there was quite a bit, William, that they discussed. Not only that, but Russia and China are building, get this, a massive $55 billion pipeline called Power of Siberia, delivering gas from Siberia to Shanghai. And remember, William, I was talking about this quite a few months ago, saying, what if? But, it just seemed like a long distance to go. But I guess now they're really starting to think about this. So they are thinking about doing their own pipeline.
So Russia sends its oil out by ship, primarily through the Black Sea. And when we got in the way of some of that, then they realized, well, then they're going to have to send it by train. So they've got a train they can railroad that they can send oil to China with.
Belt and Road Initiative. That's the first thing I thought of when you just mentioned that, but it does mention that in another article, and I was thinking, oh my God, Russia fell for the Belt and Road Initiative. But no, this is more of a partnership, though, I believe.
Right. So it's not very economical to send oil by train, so it's a lot more economical to send it by pipeline. Mm-hmm. It's more economical even than that to send it by ship, but if you can't control your ports, then you've got to have a pipeline.
Maybe that is why India, or I should say that China is looking at working a deal with India to open up a port. Maybe that's why, because it could be easier to get a port there and have things from Russia or China shipped to Russia.
Yeah, well, oil's got to go through choke points like the Panama Canal, the Suez Canal, the Straits of Malacca, the mouth of the Persian Gulf. So oil shipments can be stopped, and what they're trying to do, Russia and China together, is create a new world order to rival Schwab's Green New Deal world order. And so they want to have a banking conglomerate. They want to have trade. So China produces a lot of things, but it doesn't have a lot of raw materials, and Russia has a lot of raw materials and needs things manufactured. So that works out. So then they can have a military alliance as well. And to top it off, they're having their conclave in Uzbekistan, where nobody in the Western world can watch and listen to them. So not only will they have their own little world order, but they'll have their own secret world order, whereas our world order, everything is communicated. Their world order will be secret.
Now, the other things they worked out, they worked together, is to send money transfers to China from yuan without using SWIFT messaging system, which helps Russia bypass international sanctions. And it works towards Chinese goal of devaluing the U.S. dollar. And Russia has already established this method of transferring payments, that they have done a covert wire currency with China, bypassing SWIFT already. They said they have done this over the last month. And the Russian Finance Ministry also announced that the country is transitioning to yuan and playing into China's strategic goal of replacing the U.S. dollar with Chinese yuan as a dominant international reserve by 2049. So that was the other thing that they did together. So they have been more, I was kind of right on this, where I was saying they were calling each other back and forth and working out agreements. And now that we see this, I believe that, if they said they've been doing this for a month, this was before this meeting. So, and the other thing was, what was mentioned coming out of Beijing, I believe, is by the same time, 2049, Xi Jinping thinks he's going to be a global leader, and that's what he's working towards. And that's why he's moving spies into the United States, buying up property in the United States. See, I was wondering about this. And more, like the colleges, and they're going to pour more into the United States and Russia and even Europe, to where he can be the world's leader. So go ahead, William.
So the SWIFT money transfer uses basically blockchain technology, like they use in blockchain currencies, and they just use electronic wire transfers to do their banking. And so what they've done is they've created their own blockchain money transfer conglomerate outside that of the Western banking system. Now, our big problem is we have Democrats and liberals around the world who want to keep doing business with China to the extent they can without helping them militarily.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning they're trying to keep them within our sphere of influence, because they don't want to make other small nations like in the Pacific or Africa have to be forced to choose either the West or the East. They don't want to start a great world competition between the West and the East. Mm-hmm. When we're talking East, I'm talking Russia and China. So the conservatives, they want to disconnect totally from China, because we're helping China with our own money, with our own technology. They're working their way into our finances through property, through spying, trying to get into our economic system and gather information on all of the stockholders and whatnot, so that they can threaten them or blackmail them or somehow get them to do their bidding. So that's really the big contest right now, is between the conservatives and the liberals, in that the liberals want to continue trying to do business that doesn't have to do with the Uyghurs or the military. And the conservatives are saying, look, they're not a near peer anymore. They're actually a peer, and we have to consider them just like we would any superpower that could be contested anywhere, that could be involved in a contest with us anywhere in the world.
Mm-hmm. Even space.
So it's basically those who want to stay the way things have versus the way things have become. And it's hard to bring people along sometimes who want to stick with the old way of doing things, especially when they got filthy rich doing it.
Yeah. And the other thing is, we had a Lieutenant General Bradley Saltzman. He's with the Senate Armed Service Committee. They had him yesterday in a hearing, and he was saying that, or he argued that China is America's greatest threat, and not only in the region, but in space. Now, and the reason I watched it, because Senator Tom Cotton, he's from Arkansas, so he's always really good. And when I seen he was going to kind of talk to him, I thought maybe it's a good thing to watch. Now, they wanted to know what threats are we facing, and what is his goals for the branch moving forward. And his response was, this is quoting, the most immediate threat, in his opinion, is that space, with which our strategic challengers, first and foremost China, are aggressively pursuing capabilities that can disrupt, degrade, and ultimately even destroy our satellite capabilities and disrupt our ground infrastructure. And he said, and one of the earliest priorities that he wants to do is make sure we're on track to build an effective capability, and basically get people up there to learn what they need to protect space. Now, the other thing that was added before Cotton was brought in was For one, Trump is the one that started Space Force, and the other is China is wanting to own the moon, but they want to put a military base on the moon, so they're not, they say, free flying in space. Of course, China says no, they're not after our satellites, but just to gain. Um, um, Pretty much be able to own the moon. And they said Mars is next. They want to own Mars. And then they would charge for anybody that did space missions to either one. And then Senator Cotton came up and he said, he pressed him for it. He says, you mean that space itself could be a war fighting domain? Correct? Is that what you said, sir? And he said, and Salzman responded, I do. Okay, so there's timeless principles of war that have stood the test of time. From Alexander to Washington to Napoleon to Grant, that would apply in space, just like here on Earth. Right? And that's what Cotton said. And Salzman said he agreed. Space Force is the newest branch of the U.S. military that was founded under former President Trump in 2019. He said, Salzman said as a reminder. And then Tom Cotton nodded. So, William, it really does sound like we're going to go to a Space Force. I don't know if it's Trump's Space Force. I can't remember what he said, and I couldn't really find anything on it, except for he wanted to start Space Force. But it really does sound like it could get aggressive in space.
So here's the reason why. China looked at what happened to the United States when we went to war in Desert Storm. And they found out that the United States basically gains air superiority and therefore can target anything on the ground when their army moves forward. Well, China was worried about that, so they created their very own missile service. So they've got a Navy, they have an Army, they have an Air Force, and they have a missile service as well. Its very own command. And its entire job is to ensure that no matter who tries to fly over, if they try to land troops in China, that they can be targeted by these missiles and wiped out. So because China decided to do that, they spent most of their money not on their Air Force, not on their Army, not on the Navy, but on missiles and on missile ways to deploy missiles on tracked vehicles and on regular carriages. So you can imagine how that could also translate into space. Now, we got all these missiles and rockets. Well, now we can not just target aircraft carriers and beaches and the first ring of islands around China, but we can go ahead and target space. We can target satellites, and we can boast that we'll be to the moon first if we choose. And there's a credible threat there because there are so darn many missiles in China. It makes sense.
Yeah. And I think that'll be the next. I don't think we'll see the battle in our lifetime. I think it's going to take 20, 30 years for China to get up there, get set up, and figure out how they're going to fight on the moon with gravity, anti-gravity and stuff. I think that's going to be a tough one.
They're saying they'll be able to do it from the ground and be able to put their troops into space as they need them, so they don't have to maintain them in space. They just put them up at the moment they need them.
Yeah. Or what about now? What we're moving into tonight is robots, war robots, or drones, because they can do that from here too, and they could just drone fight it or robot fight it. And there are some.
Right. So they don't have to put people into space. They can put their robots into space. They can put any artificial intelligence driven or or anything driven from a ground-based communication system, they can fight war remotely, just like the United States, if they combine those two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so now we kind of see that it's, well, I thought it was just Iran that was sending drones, and what it was is British intelligence that they found out, and that it's they said likely Iran sent some drones with North Korea and Iran that will see test of their weapons against NATO's. NATO has their own drones. And then, of course, some of our allies, the British and I know we have drones. Russia's got some really serious drones, but they have deployed Iranian-made drones for the first time this week, according to the British intelligence. And Russia is almost certainly increased getting drones in the sky. And not only that, but they're even saying unmanned tanks that have been showing up. And they're saying that's why it looks like some of the tanks early on in February, March, like the Russians just left them. They said about 25% of those tanks were unmanned drones. So, I didn't even think about that. When they said they seen the tanks empty, there was nobody in there. But then it looked like there was men gathered around further down. But come to find out through British intelligence, these were unmanned tanks. And so this kind of starts working into the war of the drones that we're starting to see more and more of. Now, U.S. officials said last week that Russia turned North Korea to purchase military equipment, including artillery shells and rockets. But what they wanted to do was, if they give them these drones or sell them these drones, they would have the money to get these weapons that they want. Now, Russia has received Iranian drones, but ran into technical problems trying to deploy them. So what I'm hearing on the ground is, yeah, these drones, they are having kind of problems with them, but now they are seeing, or they have heard rumors that Iranians are now with Russians helping them fly these drones. So now we got Iranians helping the Russians, not really on the battlefield, but just on the drone field itself. And they say that they lost a Shahed 136 near the front lines, and a real possibility that Russia is attempting to use a system to conduct tactical strikes rather than more strategic targets further into Ukraine. So, they've had pictures of them crashed, and they just, to me, they look like miniature airplanes in a way. And you guys will see tonight. I got some videos for people to watch. And the risk of testing North Korea and Iran testing these drones against NATO is, there is a good possibility, and Iran even brought this up as well as Russia, is they don't want their drone technology getting into the hands of the enemy. I think everybody, they all look the same to me, William. Everybody's drones are kind of alike. And so
these, the drones all came from the same place. They're an outgrowth of the model airplane industry back in the 80s. And as electronics has got smaller and smaller in cell phones, then the technology's been available to all of our enemies as well, to be able to fly some of these drones remotely.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Now that they have AI, now these drones can do a lot of the flying themselves and only have to have very little input from a ground tracking station, which is good because then it's easier to conceal them on the battlefield. Because if you have something talking back and forth all the time, electronics with electronic signals, then those can be picked up remotely, and we can tell what's going on in the battlefield and where these things are and target them. So if they can quiet them down so that they're not communicating all the time, they're just getting a small instruction and listening for it and then executing it without flaw, then they're much harder to target. And so that's what's going on right now. The other thing that's going on, and the reason they look the same, is they're using the same types of motors. They're using the Rotax 912 or a Lycoming, both of these manufactured in Austria, or they're using what's new is the diesel engines, and they're basically copies of a Mercedes or BMW automotive diesel engine, or they're using a turboprop, and those all look like the Pratt & Whitney 600. And so all of these things are the same. All of them don't have to have a lock system, so oxygen for the pilot. They don't have to have ejection seats. They don't have to have gauges and displays. They don't have to have a canopy. They don't have to have pressurization systems for a pilot to keep the pilot alive. All of these things can be done away with, so they're a lot smaller. They can carry a heavier payload and they can loiter longer upstairs. Plus, they can be made out of materials that aren't as safe. So instead of using aluminum and titanium and steel, they can use wood and fiberglass and plastic and styrofoam and get the same job done.
Lightweight.
And they don't have to worry about killing a pilot, so they can put up a much less safe aerial vehicle and still get the same job done in a lot of ways over the battlefields without losing really expensive multi-million-dollar trained pilots.
Yeah. Now, D.B. Wolf had a really good statement. He says, "You mean to tell me robots in space, wouldn't they be able to be hacked?" Now, that's a really good question. They probably could be. That's one thing that they're going to have to worry about is being hacked. I can imagine robots starting to have the battle and then end up like doing the waltz with each other. That just sounds like something China would do. Instead of our U.S. robots going to war, they would have them dancing with them. Boy, that would be a picture to see. But they can be hacked.
Human beings are the reason that our warfighting capacities can't be hacked. Anything that uses a digital quantum system can be hacked. It's just on-off switches, whereas human beings have what's called fuzzy logic, and they have morals, so they can go into a battle and they will continue to fight and deal with problems right until their last breath. We have pictures of commanders in Vietnam with their arms and legs blown off in the process of slowly dying and still commanding their troops until their last few breaths. You can't do that with a machine. It's not adaptive, and it's not going to have some will to fight no matter what. Once it's non-functional, it's just non-functional.
Yeah. So anyway, William, I'm gonna make some adjustments here, and we're gonna go on to some of our videos. Now, the first one um, is something that I have talked about before. Let's see, I'm going to get this. So I'm in the way. I'm in the way of the words. And what this is a invisibility cloak that has been out. Me and William. William goes, boy, that's been out for a long time. It's been out since 2003, but they are starting to use it on the battlefield. And um, so they're a step closer to this new um, um, invisibility cloak. It comes in hard plastic, but it also comes in like a cloth. Now, a lot of people seen it, like it says here on Harry Potter's invisibility cloak. It's around the same thing. I think it was probably used in the Harry Potter movie. Um, and this is something that, and I wish they had a better video of it being used on the battlefield, because they have used it to where they have been able to move right in front or run right in front of soldiers uh, as an enemy of ours, and they didn't see them. And they almost walked right up on them and then moved back and then climbed up in a tank. So the video is out there, but it's very grainy and it's really hard to see what's really going on. So I'm going to go ahead and so let me turn off the sound. So you're going to see it's called like a quantum stealth. I got to pull our stuff down. That way you guys can read it. And then I'm in the way. And so it's like they said, it's paper thin technology, and it can bend. Um, Even the plastic can be bent to be able to cover a tank, cover a plane, be in front of a plane and not be seen. And like you see on the screen, a Canadian company has been developing this for years. Uh, and so in William, you want to say something about the lighting on this?
So what this is a refractive material, meaning it picks up light from other directions except for direct line of sight. And they've been able to make these prisms in this refractive material on, down on an atomic level, rather than big mirror chunks all over, cut into a big piece of plastic, and they just roll it out, by the sheet, and it can be either hard or soft.
Yeah.
It doesn't stop you from being able to hurt the person behind it, because it just provides concealment. It doesn't provide protection like a wall or a wood berm. So you're only able to hide, but you're not able to protect yourself from a bullet or whatnot. So it's good, but it's only so good.
Yeah. Now, Boston Robotics, I'm so very impressed with the robots. Now, what you see on your screen here, they say it was a parody. Um, um, they had to they did it in slow-mo and then they sped it up so it looks like this robot is really in this big duel going on with this guy. And I had, first everybody tried to debunk it and say that robot was a guy in a robot suit, but no, it's actually a robot, and they just did it to trick everybody. But they meant it to be funny and for everybody to enjoy. But now there is this video here has three military robots that are out, but Boston Robotics is just amazing at what they've been able to do. They're the ones that are the makers of the robot dog that we see for the Army. So as we're talking about this, I'm going to go ahead and let this play. There is no sound because they'll hit me. So if you, they said they sped it up, the robot up, and kept the guy at the normal um, basically normal speed, and the robot at a faster speed. But these robots can do everything that this robot is showing. Um, William, they've got this one and they've got another one that I think they call Atlantis or Atlas. And he is, they're finding out he could do a lot more than this robot can. And um, uh, so, I mean, you could see this robot it does have the speed and the running power. Now, here's your tanks that I'm thinking, when I seen this, it was kind of like um, we this is those unmanned tanks that we could be possibly sending over for war now. And you can see these are unmanned. William, I don't know if you could see the screen, but see, they're not
I
even
can.
really it's not really a tank. It is it's got the tank wheels, but then it's got the firepower on the top of a gun. And they even got a mini one that they're going to show next. And Boston Dynamics, yes, thank you, DB Wolf. I call them robotics, so I did say that, and DB's got it right. Boston Dynamics. Um, uh, what if they can't be stopped? Well, now I'm under the impression now, Karen, that these are all run by remote control. By it's a man. So if you got, I gotta stop this before it. Oh, here we go. If you got a man running now, if he's rogue, yeah, these robots can't hurt you. I don't think they can make decisions on their own just yet, but I could be wrong. Um, Boston Robotics or Dynamics, they come out with something all the time on these robots, and they're very stiff. But now they even have them dancing. Um, the one you seen, and there's the other one, the Atlas. They can dance. That's why I was saying end up doing the waltz together on the moon. Now these little things, now see how they got the remote control? And that's what me and William's talking about, is it all stemmed from, what'd you say, the 80s, William? With RC is what they called it, remote control, little toys. I mean, I got one for my grandson that's a nice sized truck, but they got bigger and bigger and bigger. And eventually you got people like this Boston Dynamics that is now starting to make things realistic and bigger. Um, so, William, this one here has a little gun in it. So, it's called Dogo. Dogo. And it's got a gun you can put in there, a little 9mm, and they can make it for any gun, they say. They can just ride right up and shoot at the soldiers, unless they can shoot it and stop it. So go ahead, William.
Well, let this go on. I'll talk about it in a bit.
Yeah. So now, and the little robots, you could see they got the screen and they could see. So it's got a camera on it. Very scary, Linda said. And Karen says she don't trust it. But you guys are getting a really good look at the future of war, because more and more they're coming up with these items. And what it does is it saves our soldiers from being out on the battlefield. Um, Indoor, it says indoor, outdoor, it can go through water. This little guy can. And these are the same type of robots they put up on Mars to take specimens. So you're looking at pretty much what the future of what we could put up in space, or on the battlefield, or even they're saying police and SWAT teams, and even ICE or Border Patrol could even use these. And they're all the way from this little tiny guy up to the bigger tanks, to a regular, it looks like a full tank, but they're all unarmed. It's all run by the computer screen. And you see that it's no longer sitting at a computer like when the drones first came out during Obama. Now it's handheld. So it's just about done, William. But it's the Dogo, this one here. And the one before that, you seen the tank, the small tank with the gun on top of it. And it didn't even have an inner tank where people would even be because they got everything they need on the upper part. Now, this one here is one of the newer robots that they're working with. And I think this one here is slower and is not as like the Boston Dynamics. This one here, I believe, oh boy, it said something there and I didn't get it. Oh well. But it's got this one going in with a fire that can go in and maybe even put fires out. So even though we're looking at all kinds of different robots that could help us out in different ways, like this one. What if you can get this?
So these were developed to send machines in where people shouldn't go, like into where there's like Fukushima, when it melted down, they couldn't send people in, or when there's a fire in a chemical plant where they can't send people in to fight fire. That's where these things are really good because they're big. They can handle a lot of pressure, and they have a lot of strength. The problem is they just happen to be slow. So when it comes to robots, it's easiest to fly or sail a robot. Then the next one easiest is to roll a robot. And the hardest is to put it on 4 legs and then 2 legs. So each time you go from flying to water to rolling to quadruped, then to bipedal, it takes an increase in computing power. And so these robots are good in places where they don't have to go very far. And where this all came from is General Dynamics and General Atomics and General Robotics and General Computation and Boston Dynamics. They took all the technology they had from, you have the cell phone and Wi-Fi, you have the gamers algorithms, so they can use that to control them. Then they can use what was learned by the remote control gadget industry that people all love to play with, model airplanes and boats and cars. And then they added 2 additional things, which is really high strength batteries, which has what you were talking about earlier with with Tesla, and our high speed magnets, like earlier with the F-35. So they've taken all these things and combined them. But the more energy it takes to run the system, the more computing power it takes to run the system, the less distance they can travel. So even though you saw the thing with the shootout between the robot and the people, it can't go that far. No. They just show it in a small area, then they show it in another area. And that's about all they can do with the battery packs that they have. But as they get more and more dense in the battery capacity, using less and less material to hold that electrical potential, the more of these robots are become more and more useful.
Yeah. Now, they do, and what I want to mention before we go on to the planes is nanotechnology. And that's the little things. and they actually have nano spy technology where they can make them look like bugs, dragonflies, bees, beetles, flies, and they actually are that size, but they have little cameras on them, and they're like little drones, and they can send in like 4 or 5 like flies at a time that they can fly in sync. Here a while back, I had a video on it, and I know YouTube took it from me, but I'm going to look through my Facebook files to see if I can find it for you guys and post it. So now, as we move into the airplanes, it's very I was very surprised that, look, these are, oops, I guess you guys can't look if I don't put it up there. They're almost the size of a regular plane. And now
what
these
makes airplane good for being used for unmanned drones is they have a gasoline or jet turbine engine and are constantly generating power, so they don't have to have batteries.
right.
And that gives them a long endurance. A tank has an engine and power generation, so they can run as long as they have a tank of gas in a tank. But just these little electric vehicles, they don't have much endurance, so their utility on the battlefield's limited.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the things that's showing that they did show some guys climbing into a plane, but now, as you can see, these drone planes can be used as refuelers. They can carry bombs or missiles, rockets, very small though. But when I seen this, I thought, what an awesome idea is for these drone planes to be used to refuel the jets in space. Or in the air. I'm not in space, but in the air. And what an awesome idea. And that's kind of what it's showing you here is this is one of the things it can do. Now they have to, when they are testing them, from what I've been able to read on these, they do put people in them in case, because they don't want to lose a project that's $1 million project. So to test them to make sure they get it right, they do put a man in there in case something happens and they can switch the controls over. So
they can use them for refueling. They can use them for anything a fighter jet's used for, but they can also use them for ferrying injured patients. So they don't have to have a pilot now to send a patient out for individual care.
mm-hmm.
They can load them in a drone, and a couple hours later, that patient lands someplace else in the world.
Yeah, and now the one I do have one that is showing. It is a Russian drone, and Orion was testing it to the air-to-air engagement against another enemy drone. So this is a Russian thing. And it kind of gives you the idea that Russia's got these things, and they do have their own drones. But now that they're starting to deplete their supplies, they are asking for Iran and them to send others. But this will give you an idea of what the Russian drones look like and what it really looks like with a kind of a small battle. So, oops, I better take the music off. Music will get me in trouble. So this is
Oh, that's a Hellfire missile.
Mm-hmm.
Or its equivalent.
Yeah. So to me,
that drone looked like one of our drones. That's actually our drone, and the other one was their drone. That one's a Bakhtar from Turkey.
And you could see all the different shapes. This almost looks like a helicopter. To me, it looked like a fish in the sky, but that's Elly's interpretation. But see,
that's one of our helicopters. That's used out on for our Navy.
Mm-hmm. And then you seen it drop, a bomb So these things can drop bombs, and yeah, to me, it would save our pilots. It would save these robots, these unmanned military vehicles. To me, is going to save a lot of our soldiers, and they can be used to as ground troops, more or less. But at least it's going to be more of a drone to drone issue with tanks or planes, or they even have water vehicles. So we can't leave the Navy out, William, because even the Navy has got these unmanned drones that are battleships or smaller ships. I don't think they're battleships. So
that helicopter is called a Fire Scout.
oh, and they just blew it up.
Yeah. So that the Americans blew it up. So they don't use those are Russian airplanes. That one is Russian. If they got the slit on the back and looks like a manta ray, then those are American.
Yeah, and I'm glad we did drones tonight, because there so much is being mentioned with drones over there with Ukraine, and we haven't really mentioned much what they're going to do in Taiwan. But now they're mentioning the drones more and more.
Drones have been a game changer in Ukraine because Ukraine hasn't been able to dominate the air like the United States does before we go into battle. So it gives them short duration view of the battlefield so that they can put their artillery and their missiles in place, because they have GPS global positioning. They know exactly where they are over the earth. They can instantly send those coordinates out to their fire control teams, and the control teams can put up artillery and missiles immediately, not having to wait for remote sensors from space and going to a command center and then back. It happens real quickly. So they're using off the shelf, for the most part, technology that hobbyists and filmmakers have been using for a long time, and using those for close in support help to their military on the front lines. Not deep behind lines, but just right on the front lines, because remember, these are battery powered for the most part.
Yeah, and cobalt probably the same type of batteries.
That's the high strength magnets, right?
Yeah. So
it's Tesla technology.
Yeah, and so this last one is Combat UGV. I call it Combat Ugly, because once you see it, you'll see why. Ugly meaning it's a bad mama jamma, what we call here. So
U stands for unmanned, G stands for ground, V stands for vehicle.
Mine sounded better. So, and it's more like a tank, as you see, like the other one we've seen, but they're supposed to be a little bigger, and it kind of gives you the info on it. You might have to back it up and watch it and see what it can do. I tried to blow it up enough.
That's battery powered. See, there's no place for an engine on there.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's going to be used for close nearby, and then they'll have to recharge it.
Yeah.
The bottom of it is just what we have on our skid steers here in the United States. Then it's got the guns from a helicopter. The only thing that's a robot is that turning part and the up and down, and that's just being done by servos and a guy with a cell phone and a joystick.
Yeah, and this one has a grenade launcher on it, where the other one didn't. So this one can launch grenades. And you can see it's got quite a few guns on it, and it's bigger. And you've seen the guys down in the trench where they're running it right there, where they are running that from a trench. Now, would they be caught? Maybe. But what if they threw that, what we talked about, the invisibility over the top of them, and they wouldn't be seen. It's and that
they're safer in the trench because Earth will stop a bullet
Yeah, that's right. And so let's bring William
But
back.
if you were to put
Oops.
that visibility cloak over the top of that tank, then the people wouldn't necessarily see that tank coming.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
that's
Mm-hmm.
the way that could be used to defeat your enemy is hide the tank, not hide the people.
Yeah, yeah. So as you could see tonight, we showed you many aspects: the tanks, the planes, the robots. I told you about the little nanotechnology that can spy. Uh, you know, I should have grabbed a few boats, but as William said, this came from um, the kids playing with the remote control cars, and they back then they had boats, they had airplanes, and like he said, they just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I did watch them get bigger. Um, I was telling William earlier that from where we lived, away from when I first got married, we lived about 50 miles north of my folks. And on the way to my folks' house, they had a little airstrip. And I thought, wow, what a tiny airstrip. And then we noticed one day they were out there with remote control planes. And they had the biplanes, but then they started getting into kind of these jets. The jets got bigger, and then we started. They told us about the battleship races in one of the lakes that was close by. So I think, William is so right. And William goes, "Well, you know where this came from, don't you, Ellie?" And I said, "Well, no." And he reminded me, and that's yeah, that's where we get it from. Any
They're
of
toys.
they're big boy toys. I wouldn't mind having
Now,
I wouldn't mind having that last one that has a grenade launcher. I don't know. I'm into grenade launchers myself. I don't seem like the type that would want a grenade launcher, but uh, that uh, I like the whole grenade launcher thing. Must be the fireworks I play with. So, would you like to add any last words? Any song of the week?
song of the week.
Not Fire and Rain like
Well,
James Taylor this morning. You hear about that, William?
there's a song called "Hello" by Leo Borriacchioli in Finland, and it's pretty funny. And that's what we're using the drones for, is to say a little hello over the airwaves and over the battlefield. So I guess that's my song, "Hello," cover by Leo Baracchioli from Finland.
Yeah. So, well,
It's
good.
pretty funny.
So, if, you'll have to send it to me and I'll add it to the list. Um, there was one I had earlier in my head, but I can't even, I'm a brain fart. There you go. Uh, that last song was great, William. So there, we've got a list going for, oh, it was on the other page. I'll start one over here on the news network again. Um, and I'll have to find, I think I still have your last email. If not, mail it to me again. And we'll get I'll just have to put them on both pages. We are on our second strike on Investigator News 2. And all they got to do is keep combing through my videos. And if they find one thing wrong, they're gonna take it out. My idea is to only do a week at a time and then take the videos out, so they can't go back and hit us up for some. This last one, folks, was from February. The one that hit us up last month was from August of last year. So they're searching my videos. So let's not give them something to search. Is how I feel on it. So, William, anything else, or we'll just close up for the night? Um,
I'd just like to say thank you for the opportunity, and I hope that we help people out there to understand a little bit what's going on. It'd be nice later if we could talk about what's happening in Ukraine,
mhm.
but that's for another day.
Yep, we'll get to it next week. I did want to bring the drones in because that's a lot of what's in the news. today and the last few days. They're talking drones. So I wanted to show you guys, kind of give you an idea of what they're talking about. Whether it's a battle drone, or it's the tanks, or they're not using the robots yet. But then, if they're talking drones, more than likely it's the drones in the skies. So, and we love William doing this. I thanked him very, very, very much for doing the show with me on Wednesdays. Um, so with that, folks, we will be back tomorrow morning and the 2 shows in the morning. And if you missed the ones from earlier, go on back and watch them. The morning show was pretty good. And just so you guys know, we're here. So if you missed the shows earlier because you just found us, go back and watch the shows from today. And then we'll just keep plucking away. Uh, when they do this to me, I take it that I'm doing something right because they don't want me talking. So, all right, folks. So we will see everyone tomorrow morning. And William probably in the chat room to help me along and give me a little of advice sometimes. I get a little squirrely there sometimes. But yeah, I still say the tank was a bad mama jama. Isn't it Mama Jama or Mama Jammy? I'm in the South and I should know. All right, so you guys have a wonderful evening and go watch a great movie. And if not, go back and look at some of the specs on those tanks. Uh, and always subscribe and share our shows. Over on Facebook, we thank you, more viewers. And we'd like you to follow us and share our shows also. Hit the bell, hit the like button, and we're back on Investigator News Network. So have a nice evening, folks. Bye-bye. Okay, William, there.